Please note that in this show, you might hear graphic descriptions or language that may not be appropriate for everyone. Listener discretion advised.
You know, there's loads of things that I put on hold, and I don't regret it because I did it for her. You know, I don't have any regrets, but for you to turn around and tell me that I can't do these things because I'm not a boy, that was really shit.
Welcome to Parentless Podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Relaford. On this show, we're going to be speaking with others who have experienced the loss of one or both of their parents or parental figures. As we heard in episode 12 with Louisa Velarde, being parentless is like an island, and I don't know how to swim. Thank you for being my life jacket.
Okie dokie. I'm Rekha or Rekz. I'm from Birmingham, UK. I am 36 years old, which I don't really like to announce normally, but yeah, I'm 36. I'm married. I got married just over a year and a half ago, and he's great. He's been super supportive with everything, and he's gone through all the motions and all the emotions and everything else alongside me, which has been lovely. I have two older brothers. I actually told them about my own podcast just the other day. So that was a bit of a coming out, I suppose, because I hadn't shared it with anybody except for my husband. So that was a bit weird, but yeah, I digress. So I'm 36, I'm a teacher, and I've been teaching for about 10 years, just over 10 years, and it's the best job in the world, and I absolutely love it, and it does give me some sort of escape.
Tell me, why are we here, and who is your person?
So my person is my mom, and I lost her just 2.5 years ago. It feels like yesterday. I did actually lose my dad when I was 3 years old as well. But the whole reason behind my podcast and my grief process and my journey and stuff has been due to my mom, because although I lost my dad when I was 3, it was very different. I didn't know about loss. I didn't understand it. And, you know, I spoke about it briefly in my podcast where I mentioned that I didn't really have any recollection of him, and I didn't really have any memory of him. And I think for me, it was more of I knew stuff about him because the stories that were told about him. But yeah, my journey and this whole thing that I'm doing it for is for my mom. And yeah, she was 67. At the time. She actually, on just the Monday just gone, she would have had her 70th birthday. So that was a tough day. It was a really strange day because it was my first day back at school. All the kids were back. The last two birthdays I've had, well, her birthday I've had without her, I've taken the day off work and just kind of been on my own, or, you know, just kind of dealt with my emotions and dealt with I think I just feel like it's a day where I can just be sad and be okay. It's okay to be sad. And, you know, and I didn't have the opportunity this year because I was back to work, back to, you know, routine and stuff. And as much as it was difficult, you know, the kids were a distraction, and it was great. You know, it was a great day up until the point of me leaving school, and it just went to shit, basically. I was a complete mess. I left work and I played my mom's favorite music in the car, and I was driving down and I went to the park because my mom loved going to the park. And I spent probably not very long there, probably about an hour and a half, just walking around, just thinking about her, because we used to walk around the park together. And I sat on a bench which she used to sit on, and I posted a birthday message on my personal Instagram page, just kind of as a dedication, I suppose. And I did that, and then I walked back to the car and drove home. And then that evening was really difficult. I literally, just sobbed my little heart out, because it wasn't, you know, it would have been a 70th birthday and we would have done so much. And, you know, because it was a big one, we would have been doing nice things. And I think just thinking about all the things that we weren't able to do, that wasn't easy. I think that was really, really difficult. And I think for me, I'm not one to kind of talk about stuff so much, which is really ironic because I'm doing a bloody podcast and I'm talking to you. But for me, I find it quite difficult to kind of, especially speak to my husband about certain things because I don't want to worry him. I don't want to like stress him out because as much as it is difficult for me, I would never want to put that burden or that stress on anybody else. And, you know, he tells me off for, you know, not talking to him and stuff. But we sat upstairs, he sat with me and I just sat with him and cried for a little while. And then I got really tired. I got really, really tired because I'd had a long day at work. And yeah, I think I was just like, I'm exhausted and I just want to go to sleep. And I just went to bed. It was a very weird day. It was a very, very weird day. But I think it was needed. It was needed.
Of course. And like you said, normally you would take off from work, but this wasn't really like an option.
You know, it was the first day back for me and first day back for the kids. And for me, my job is really important. And, you know, the kids are really important to me, and which is why I do the job that I do. I mean, I love it. And I think for me, it was just the fact that if it's their first day back and I'm not there, I wouldn't, you know, I didn't want that to affect them in any way, to think, you know what, I'm not there on their first day back. So I did it more for them rather than for me. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I went in and I'm glad I, you know, got to spend the day with them and see them and catch up with them. It was really nice.
What is your mom's name?
My mom's name is Champa, Champa. Yeah, it's always been pronounced wrong with people, but, you know, that's cool. Yeah, but I've never obviously called her by her first name unless we were just having a few jokes and stuff. But generally, it's either Mom or Mama Bear or Mummy. Yeah, that's my usual calling for her.
I did see you mention Mama Bear a lot in your podcast so far.
Yeah.
Where did that nickname come from? Do you know?
You know what? I don't really know. It's just kind of like, I don't even think I actually ever really called it her. I think I referred to her that way when I would post things on social media or if I was talking about her to other people. I don't even think she actually knew that I called her Mama Bear, which is quite strange because I do refer to her as that. And I think everybody else refers to her as that now because that's what I do. But I think it's more of a me just, yeah, it's just what I called her for other purposes, really.
You've given me a few little details here. Take me back to when you first started this journey of where you heard that she was sick.
So I'll take you back probably 3-4 years ago, maybe. My brother had moved to the Cayman Islands. I'm free to talk about him now because he knows about everything. So yeah, I haven't mentioned him so much in my podcast because I was a bit worried, like either of my brothers, because I was worried that I didn't want them to come across it and think that I was talking about them without them knowing. So yeah, I'm free to talk about him. He moved over to the Caribbean 5 years ago, actually, in fact. And I think the year after, me and Mum went to visit him, and we spent our first Christmas in the sunshine, and it was great. It was the best holiday ever because I've never ever spent Christmas in the sun. It's always cold and miserable and rainy over here. On the odd occasion, we might get a bit of snow, but not very much. So to spend it on a beach in the sun, in the heat, was amazing. And, you know, we spent our time there. And then later on that year, actually not even later on that year, I think we went there for Christmas. And I think around January, February time, Mum decided she wanted to go to India. So she went to India, spent a couple of months there. She did now and again when she had some free time or she just felt like she wanted to go and spend some time with her family over there. She actually went over to India and she came back probably in the March. So just after her birthday, I think it was. I don't think she actually spent her birthday here that year. She came back after her birthday and from there it was just very, she kind of came back really unwell in herself. And to be honest, we just thought she'd picked up like a bug or something, like while she was traveling, you know, with the water change and everything else. And as much as India is, you know, as clean as it wants to be, there's certain parts of India that aren't. And, you know, she was in villages and stuff with, you know, some members of families. And you know, you do pick up things when you're on holiday. So we just put it down to that. And, you know, she was really like sick in herself. She was becoming very like achy in her stomach, losing her appetite, not eating so much. And over the next few months, it was just kind of like hit and miss. So some weeks were good, some weeks were bad, and it was just very up and down. And I think it probably came to around, I want to say July, around July time. So I actually hadn't told my mum about my partner in all the time that we'd been together. So, and I actually told my mum in the middle of July about him. And yeah, so it was just before then, actually. It was just before I'd actually told her about him that she became like really unwell. Like she just what really, really wasn't eating. She anything she was eating, like it just affected her bowel movements and her digestive system and all of that. And, without going into too much detail, she just wasn't keeping anything down. She had a massive love for food and she lost that. She lost that love for food. She wasn't eating anything. She'd eat like towards, I think, probably September time, August, September time. She was eating like minimal amounts of food or like a bit of bread or a bit of like rice or just really, really minimal amounts of food. And it just wasn't like her. And I think it was September, mid of September, where she had, she was eating like meal replacement drinks or drinking meal replacement drinks because she wasn't keeping anything down. She wasn't drinking or anything like that either. And I remember calling the doctors to try and get her seen to because she'd been seen to quite a few times and stuff. And, in all this time since she'd been back from India, she'd been monitored by doctors, GPs, hospital. She had scans, tests, blood tests, you name it, she had it. And yeah, so this was like middle of September, and I ended up calling the doctors, and the doctors were due to do a home visit. Didn't end up doing it. And then I ended up calling. We have an emergency service, but like a not real emergency, so it's like a backup that we can call. So I called them and got some advice, and I just wanted to see what they could do, or what they could say, or what they could suggest. And with everything that I was saying, they wanted to come and check on her. They checked on the paramedics came, and they checked on her, and she was like severely dehydrated. So they took her in for like monitoring and checking and stuff. And yeah, she went in September 25th, I think it was. And yeah, it was really weird because she'd had like spouts of hospital visits in the past, probably when I was growing up, and she always kind of bounced back and she was okay. And it was really weird. I don't know, but we went in, and they put her in a ward on her own because she was suffering with diarrhea and stuff, so they didn't want to, with infection and stuff. They kept her in a separate room, and yeah, she was monitored, she was checked, she'd had tests done, she had scans done. The end of that first week, she was diagnosed with cirrhosis, which is, you probably know, but a form of liver cancer. And you only generally hear of, well, when I was researching it after I'd found out about it, you only really hear about it with like people that are, excessive drinkers of alcohol. And mum never touched a drop. She was very religious. We follow the Hindu faith, and she was never a drinker. I think she used to tell us off when we would like, pick up a drink, or we'd order a drink at the restaurant or something. But cirrhosis is a very, it was like the final stage of like liver damage. And yeah, so it was kind of like, okay, so where do we go from this? And when I was looking online and stuff, and as you do, you find stuff out, and then you kind of, you go on Google and you try and you do your own research and pretend you're a doctor. Yeah, I tried to find out some information about it, and yeah, it was telling me that it was the final stages of liver cancer, and it was something that you can't really, come back from. You can't reverse it. The only way out of it is liver transplant. And mum was overweight. And she had other health issues like diabetes and, high blood pressure and arthritis and all sorts. But, I'd kind of thought they're not going to operate on her to do anything like that. So I was like, okay, we've got to think about what else. And then I think from that day, it all just deteriorated. It was just, that I think that weekend she'd had a fall because she wasn't eating and she didn't have any energy, and she'd had a fall in the shower when she was in the shower, and then she didn't have the confidence to get out of bed. And then I think after the weekend on the Monday, they'd from the scan results, they'd found that basically that there was some sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, some sort of something showed up on the X-rays and stuff underneath or around her liver, and they were saying that it could be cancerous and they need to do some biopsies on it. So we were like, okay, we just got to hope for the best. We've got to be positive and to see what happens. And the biopsies never happened because she really, really deteriorated. Like she was really, really wasn't eating, wasn't drinking. She wasn't really in the mood for anything. She didn't really want to do anything. She was struggling to get out of bed because of the fall and stuff. And it just kind of was like a vicious cycle almost. So they never got to do the biopsies. And then they'd had a second opinion, or they got more consultants involved, and they had a look at her scans and X-rays and stuff again. And they basically were like, it is cancer, and that there was just no coming back from it. And it was really weird because I spoke about this on my podcast as well, but it was really weird because on the Wednesday before we had the terrible news, but on the Wednesday I'd gone to visit her, as we visited her every day. I spent Wednesday evening with her, and we watched, like some soaps. You may or may not have heard of them: EastEnders, Hollyoaks, all these like weird soaps that she used to love and adore. And I thought it was a bit of a turnaround. I thought, what, she was in good spirits, and she'd eaten some food and she'd had a bit to drink, and she was talking a bit more, and we had a nice evening. It was really nice, and it was really pleasant. And I just thought it was a bit of a bounce back. And yeah, so then I left that evening thinking, what, she'll be okay. She's always okay. She'll be okay. And I went home, and obviously I had work the next day. So I went to work the next day, and my brother was going to see her in the hospital in the morning. So he went to see her in the morning, and I was at work. And I'm really, like, when you get involved with the kids and when you're at school, you don't have time to even like pick up your phone to even have a look, even at times like that. And it was really shit that I didn't, because he tried to call me a couple of times, and when I picked up the message at lunchtime, I called him back, and he just sounded in a panic. And he just said something like, they're not going to let her home. And I was just like, what's going on? And I remember going to my, panic stations, completely. And I remember going to my head teacher, and I telling him that I had tears running down my face, and I just said, I've got to go. I've got to go. They didn't ask me any questions. They didn't say anything. They didn't do anything. They were just like, okay, off you go. And I went and I drove, and I remember that drive to the hospital. It was bloody long. It was really long, even though it wasn't. It was like a 5-minute journey from where I worked. It just seemed like forever. Parked up. I remember walking up the corridor. I remember going to see Mum, and she was like she was kind of like sleeping. And then the doctor kind of pulled us into a different room, and my brother was trying to keep me calm and keep Mum calm and everything else, and I could see it in his face that there was something that they're not saying. And he was just like, the doctor's going to come and speak to us. And I thought, okay, fine. And he took us into a room, and he basically just said that there was nothing that they could do. Sorry. There was nothing they could do, and they were going to offer her palliative care. You know, you hear about it on the TV, and you know, you see things and you read about things, and you just think it's never going to happen to you. And yeah, you try and hold it together because you think, you know what, you don't want your mum to see you like this, and you don't want her to, you know, see you cry, because she never liked seeing me cry, because nobody does, do they? Nobody wants to see anybody cry. And then he just said there's nothing they could do, and there's nothing they will just basically make her as comfortable as possible. And I remember asking him, and I remember saying to him, look, she walked into the ambulance from the house, and you're telling me she's never going to come back out? Like, this is where she's going to, like, die and see her, you know, her few moments. And I asked how long. I think I asked how long, and they said that they didn't know. Like, it could be weeks, it could be, you know, months, and it could be days, and it was just really shit. Because I didn't really know what to do, and I kind of got it together, and I went to see her, and she was really not, you know, not really all there. She was like in and out of sleep. She was like drugged up on like morphine, and yeah, they'd, you know, that morning I think she'd had internal bleeding, so she'd coughed up blood. So they wanted to check on that. They wanted to check if there was anything they could do, or, you know, to stop the bleeding and stuff, obviously to make her comfortable. And they, you know, they took her down to have a camera shoved down her throat to see where the bleeding was going on, and, you know, she had to sign this paperwork to say that she was okay for it to go ahead, and to give them permission to do what they needed to do if they found any bleeding and stuff. And, you know, they wheeled her down in the bed, and I went down with her. I like had to like kind of wake her to say, Mum, you need to sign this paperwork. And, you know, she couldn't really lift her head, she couldn't really see what she was doing. And I remember holding her hand and not making her sign, but holding her hand as she signed this paperwork. And they took her in for I think it's called an endoscopy, I'm not sure, I might be completely wrong there. They took her in to do that, and then we waited upstairs for her in her room and stuff. We waited in the waiting room, then we went upstairs to her room, and they wheeled her back up, and they said that with the anaesthetic and stuff, it will take some time for her to come around. So we were like, okay, that's fine. So we just let her sleep it off. We let her sleep, and we let her rest, and we didn't disturb her. And it was really weird because she never really came round after that. She never came round at all. And I remember her when the morphine was like wearing off and stuff, she was screaming in pain. So she was kind of, you know, clutching at her stomach, and basically, you know, screaming out in pain. Like, it was horrible, like horrible to hear. And as a daughter, you don't want to hear your mum scream. You don't want to hear anybody scream. But when it's your mum, it's just a different kind of sends chills down your spine. And I still hear those screams now, because you know, she was going through a lot of pain, and, you know, she, you know, wasn't settling. And I remember pleading with the doctors and the nurses to say, you know, the nurses, because the doctors weren't around. I remember pleading with them, saying, you know what, you need to get the on-call doctor. You need to do something, because she's in agony. Like, she's in complete and utter agony, and you can tell, even though she wasn't awake, she was still, you know, kind of feeling the pain. And that was really horrible because it was like, she should have been resting and she should be, at ease now. And they said that they'd make her as comfortable as possible, and they're not doing that. So I fought with the nurses and said, you need to call somebody. And they did eventually. Gave her some more morphine and drugged her up and stuff. And, she settled down and, she calmed down and stuff. And, yeah, she was in her room and I was there, my husband was there. He wasn't my husband at the time, only my boyfriend actually. My brother was there and my sister-in-law was there and we were all by her side. And yeah, she kind of just settled. They kept prodding and poking her just to monitor her and stuff in terms of to see if she, her blood sugars were okay and her blood pressure was okay and stuff. And she had this oxygen mask on her face. And the on-call doctor, another doctor had come and said, basically had a look at her. So she wasn't her actual doctor at the time. She wasn't her actual consultant. She came to see her and asked us if her breathing had been like this all along. And I was like, I have no idea. Like that's her breathing. She's breathing. She's there. That's all I thought. She's still alive. She's still breathing. She's okay. Well, not okay, but she's still around. And the doctor asked me if, my mum would respond to me calling her or waking her. And I said, yeah. And, of course she would any other day, but I don't think she will today. And, she had me shout my mum's name or shout mum down her ear to see if she would wake up. And there was like nothing. She didn't wake up. She didn't nudge. I was squeezing her hand. There was nothing. There was no response back. Doctor had checked her eyes and there was no response to the light. And she was just like, her breathing has slowed right down. But this could continue. This could continue for days. It could continue for hours. We just don't know how long it will continue for. So I remember asking, or I don't even remember asking actually. I just took her oxygen mask off and I asked them to stop testing her blood and I asked them to just leave her at peace. There's nothing, she's not there. There's no point checking all those things because you're doing it for a routine, but for us it's painful to see. And we just sat with her and we were there through the night and she took her last breath probably early hours on Friday morning. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning, so she'd made it through the night. But from when we got the news, from when we got the news of her, being offered this palliative care, it was like 18 hours we had her. And, you don't get to, because she wasn't alert and we didn't know the full extent, there was nothing that could be said because she wasn't listening. So we couldn't say anything to her because she didn't, I don't even know. I assumed that after her endoscopy that she would come round and we could speak to her maybe, but there was just no conversation, no communication with her because she wasn't there. So yeah, within like 18 hours of being told that she wasn't gonna, she wasn't being offered this palliative care, she'd gone. And it was the worst moment of my life ever. Yeah. And I think what was really hard as well, because my brother, who I mentioned earlier, who was in the Caribbean, when we got the news of her, them telling us that there's nothing that they could do, and that she was being offered this palliative care, like we told him, obviously, called him up and told him, and he booked a flight straight away, and he was actually mid-flight when Mom took her last breath. And I think for me, one of the hardest things, not long after, literally within hours, when he landed, one of his friends was picking him up, and I remember texting his friend and saying, Mom's no longer around, and I want my brother to be with you before I speak to him, so he's not hearing this news on his own. And my brother doesn't always, wait for those moments. So as soon as he landed, as soon as he was waiting for his luggage, he phoned me straight away because obviously he wanted an update on Mum. He wanted to know. And I said to him, I think I asked him, wait till you're with your friend and I'll speak to you then. And he was like, no, and I remember telling him and I think that's when it kind of hit me even more like a ton of bricks, because to break the news to somebody else, your brother, to tell him that, and he didn't get to see her, and he didn't get to be by her side, that was really difficult, because then I felt for him. And I thought, me and my other brother were there, and he didn't get to be. And I remember saying to him that, Mom would never have wanted you to see her that way, because we always had this running joke of him being her favourite. And I think he was. I think he was. And I think that's why she never wanted to see him. See her that way, sorry. Yeah, and then he had to travel to Birmingham because he'd landed in London. So it was about a 2-hour journey. And he came back. Well, he got home, and we just had to wait for him to go and see her. But yeah, it was just horrific. It was just, everything was just really, really, just I can't explain it, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, because it's one of the most difficult things in the world. God, I've spoken for ages. I'm gonna stop.
That's okay. What an experience there. And really, you said that was an 18-hour time period. I felt like it was going to be much longer than that.
Yeah.
And with you being there, having to deal with that, and the time when those doctors want to speak to you in that room, that is like a moment in itself, I think. And that's like probably the first step of like, oh, all right,
shit's hit the fan.
Yeah. So wow, thank you for sharing all of that with me. I need to take some breaths as well. That is a lot. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please consider sharing the show with a friend or rating and reviewing wherever you're listening right now. This will help get the word out about the show, and if one person can be helped by listening to someone's story here, that is amazing. If you would like to share your story with me, you can visit the website at www.backhomemedia.com/parentlesspodcast. You can also email me at parentlesspodcast@gmail.com. Another way to get a hold of me is to find me on Instagram or Facebook, also at Parentless Podcast. And lastly, if you're a phone person, please leave me a voicemail at 623-396-6069. If you love the show and you'd like to help with any special projects that might go on at Parentless Podcast, or just be privy to some special extras, go ahead and visit patreon.com/parentlesspodcast. You told me that she was in the hospital September the 25th. When did she pass away?
October 5th. So okay. It wasn't even 2 weeks.
Okay. And what year was that?
2018. Yeah.
Okay.
So 2.5 years.
And that's what this space is for. I say we laugh, we cry, we remember.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Well, since we're on this bit of the story, one of the things that I do ask, you mentioned there at the end that she wasn't able to hear you. You couldn't say anything to her. now, do you tend to speak to her?
Yeah, yeah. So she's I say she. I've got a photo of her downstairs in the living room. I have photos of her everywhere, but yeah, there's this one photo of her next to my dad's photo that we've had for years, obviously. And it's where she used to do her morning prayers. She used to light a candle or a diva, we call it a diva, and she would light it every morning to do her prayers. And I kind of, when I feel up to it, I will do it. I will light, a candle. I will light an incense stick because she would do that too. She would do her morning prayers and stuff. I don't, as much as I would like to follow in her footsteps with doing those things religiously, I still find it quite difficult. I still find it very hard to, do those things. I mean, I do as much as I can, but again, I think it comes down to me being quite rebellious and not following my faith and stuff, and as much as my mum would have liked. But I do what I can. So I do, and when I light the candle and when I have a few moments on my own, I prefer to be on my own. Yeah, I'll talk to her, and I'll just, what? One of the only things I really say, one of the things that I say repetitively is that I miss you. I just miss you. So, and I just say, I hope you and Dad are, are good up there, and that you continue to shine down and guide me through, this world and this life. And yeah, just are proud of me, and my brothers, and that you're okay more than anything.
Some people talk about, all these stories or of signs that they might see or anything like that, experiences that they might have. Do you have any of those?
My podcast has this with the image on the background of my Just Keep Swimming picture is a picture of a rainbow, and I think I saw that rainbow 2 days after Mum passing away. It was, I associate her and remembering her with the sunshine, which is why when the sun does shine, it puts me in a better mood because it just brings a bit of a lift, I suppose, to me. But yeah, I saw that rainbow, I think, a day or two after her passing away. And it made it, I think it was the first thing that made me smile after losing her. And it was probably quite early on to be smiling at, after losing your mom and stuff. But it kind of made me think of her. And that was my reason behind the smile and thinking, you know what? She's always going to kind of be around. And just on her birthday, actually, on the Monday, when I was walking through the park, I walked through the park for most of it, and it was quite grey and cloudy and miserable. And as I was walking past one of the ponds or down this path through some trees and stuff, after sitting on the bench that we used to sit on, I was walking down and the sun was just coming through the clouds, and it made me think of her. And I remember taking a snap of it, actually. I took a photo of it because it made me think of her. And I think, and another time of our wedding day, mine and my husband's wedding day, I think the day before it was very rainy and very miserable, even though it was the middle of August, which is our summer. It was rainy and cloudy and stuff. And on our actual wedding day, the morning was just so stunning, so beautiful. And we got married in the botanical gardens. You guys probably have similar stuff over there. It's just obviously a big like open area with greenery and flowers and lots of land and stuff. And we got married there, and I was worried about the day everyone just being cooped up in the room where we were getting married, and just being cooped up in this little area that they were dedicating to us for the break between our actual ceremony and the reception. And because the sun was shining and it was such a lovely day, everyone got to go outside and enjoy the sun and, have their canapes and stuff outside. And it was really, really nice. And things like that, I associate with her. And I think that was her way of showing me that she'll always kind of be by my side and kind of always be there at the times of need. And, the sun will always shine through on cloudy days as well. And yeah, it's just something that reminds me of her.
Do you notice rainbows more now?
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. And I'll purposely look out for them. I'll purposely think, you know what, it's been raining, there's a bit of sun, where's that rainbow? And I'll kind of be, if I'm driving or something, I'll be looking in my rear view, my wing mirrors, and just trying to see if I can spot one. And when I do, it's really nice. When I don't, I'm like, okay, next time, next
Mhm.
time. But yeah, definitely always looking for that rainbow.
Yeah. Especially now in this time of when you're remembering her birthday.
Hmm.
And now is tomorrow Mother's Day for you?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
another gloomy day on the horizon. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's tomorrow, which is when I scheduled with you that I'll do this day, and I realized, and I knew it was near my mum's birthday, and I thought, it'll be like a couple of days. I'll have got myself together at this point. I'll be fine. Obviously, then realizing that it was Mother's Day the next day. Yeah, so that's tomorrow, and that's going to be another strange one. But
Have you developed any coping mechanisms or anything to kind of help you get through these times?
my coping mechanisms are sometimes just like switching off from the world, just knowing that it's okay to be sad, knowing that it's okay to just sit and cry or sit and just be, in that moment. And I listen to Bollywood music. My mum absolutely loved it. Loads of Indian films, all of that. I don't watch them, but the music, I listen to that quite often just to remind me of her. My brother actually put together a Spotify playlist of songs dedicated to my mom. So I listen to that quite often as well. She'd like to listen to we call them bhajans, but they're kind of like prayers and stuff. Um, that mum would listen to, and they're kind of like in a tune, so there's a bit of a like a song or a musical background to it as well. Um, I listen to those quite often as well because it just reminds me of her. And as much as I'm not as religious as she is, it kind of brings me a little bit of peace. It brings me a little bit of grounding. Yeah, music I think is my biggest escape. And obviously joining the Instagram community on the grief side of it, because I've got my own personal page obviously, but dedicating this page to grief and having that escape and having those people to reach out to, that's been like super, super helpful. And I've only had that going since January, so it's not been very long at all. But that I find quite helpful because there
Mhm.
are so many people out there that have obviously gone through exactly what, you know, we've been through, other people, people that have been through, and it's just nice to know that there's other people out there that feel the same or feel the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How do you feel
Mhm.
like your life has been changed by the death of your mom? And actually here, I think we need to add your dad as well. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's that's a pretty huge part. So if you want to speak to that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah. I think for me, when mum was around and stuff, and obviously we'd lost my dad because we lost my dad when I was only 3. I think for me, it was really the norm was being brought up with just a mom. I had friends at school and, people had all like family and stuff where there'd be a mom and a dad. And to me, it was abnormal. To me, it was very much like, that's not the way life is. My life is not like that. My life is just my mom, and she has raised us and she has brought us up and she has looked after us. And I didn't have that father figure, I suppose, in my life. And I didn't feel the absence. I didn't feel that absence there because my mum made up for it, you know, on like Father's Day. As much as I remember my dad, I also remember my mom because my mom played both parts to it. My mum played both roles, and I never felt like I had anything missing. My mum obviously felt it. My mum felt it a hell of a lot. I think she must have really, really struggled with life. You know, I think she would have been 38 when she lost my dad, so very, very young. And to have raised me and my two brothers can't have been easy. So I learned a lot of characteristics from my mom. She was very caring, very considerate, very patient. But there were times where you could see that she was clearly hurting from the loss of my dad. I'm completely going off tangent. I'm not even answering your question here. But the fact that, you know, I never felt that my dad wasn't around, I give all that credit to my mom, because she made sure that we never felt that absence. And, you know, and my dad sadly passed away on the day of Diwali, which is a huge, huge Indian celebration. You know, it's a huge religious festival. And, you know, she always made Diwali a thing that we would celebrate in the house. She never like shunned upon it. She never like pushed it aside. It was always celebrated in our house, even though my dad had passed away on that day. And Diwali falls on a different day every year, depending on the Hindu calendar and stuff. But it was always celebrated. It was always like, we'd always have loads of candles lit. We'd always like go to the temple. We'd always do all those things. And she never made it a thing of, you know, we can't celebrate it because that was the day that dad died. It was always one thing that we always kind of came together as a family for. And then obviously when mum died, I think for me it was just the fear of not having the answers and not having the guidance that she provided, not having her there just to kind of, she was the one person that was the most reliable person ever, and she loved me unconditionally. And I think to know that there's never going to be a person that will do that forever and ever, no matter what I do, as much as my husband says that he will, you know, he'll say that he loves me unconditionally and stuff, which he does, but it's a different kind of love, isn't it? It's a different kind of love. And as much as I appreciate his love, it's never going to be what my mom's love was. And I miss that. I think that's a really, really difficult thing, because you don't expect it. You don't expect that to go just like that. And I think for me, it was just like that. It was literally overnight. She was gone. You know, that love was just taken away. It was snatched away, and it was just really, really difficult. But for me, I think the impact on my life, it's just not having her there. So if I was to have kids or something, like, she's never going to be there for me to ask her any questions. She's not going to be there for me to raise any concerns with or worries with or anything like that. You know, I think when I got married, that was really difficult because she wasn't there. And I always had this vision of, because obviously I grew up without my dad, my vision was that when I was to get married, my mum would give me away, that she would be the one that would walk me up the aisle and do all that and give me away and, you know, be there by my side as my mum and my dad. And then to not have her there on my big day was really shit again. But yeah, my brothers gave me away, obviously, because I asked them to. Yeah, I think because when I got married, it was very, it was the best. It was such a lovely day. It was so nice. Everything just went to, almost everything just went to plan. And obviously the absence of her was really hard. And I felt it more in the morning, just the getting ready in the house with her not being there. And to have her not be there when we're celebrating such a special day, it was really horrible. But when you're getting married, or when I got married, and I've, you know, people that I've spoken to in the past that have got married, the day is such a whirlwind that you don't have time to think about anything, because everything is just happening at such a fast pace. You know, I didn't even get a chance to eat properly because there was just so much going on. And you don't get to think about those things. But in the morning was really, really hard when I was getting ready, when my friend was doing my makeup and I was getting my hair done, and we were having all the music on and listening to all those Bollywood songs, and just her atmosphere, just because she wasn't there, it was just so different. And I remember being very, very teary in the morning, and I held it together through the ceremony. And everyone was like, "You were so strong." And I was like, "Yeah, because I'd cried all my tears in the morning. Like I literally was all cried out." But I think just her not being around for the future is my biggest sadness, I think. Just to have her not be there for anything. And I think also I fear losing others more, my husband than anything else, or my brothers. I really, that really gets to me. When my mom died, it was like I'm not scared of anything. I'm not fearful of anything because the biggest thing that would ever have hurt me has happened. But then you find other things, don't you? You find other things that you could potentially lose, and that's really hard in itself, just thinking about it.
Well, your mom sounds like she might have been a little bit bigger than life. I don't know. Did she have a really, yeah.
Yeah.
Did she have any, now you told me that she liked the music. Did she have any favorite like phrase or saying or anything that she would just say?
I think just hearing her scream my name when I'm upstairs, she'd call me Rekha. That was her thing. She'd like scream up and Rekha, and she would like call me down. That was her thing. But just, like I think when she'd comfort me, or like when she put her hand around my face, or just kind of like touch my face or touch my hair. And when she touched my hair, I used to tell her off because I don't like people touching my hair. But she'd do it in the car, like I'd be driving, and she'd just like stroke my hair from the passenger side. It's little things like that I miss. I miss her presence in the house, her radio blasting, her being in the kitchen pottering around, making noise, cooking, dancing. She used to love to dance. And she'd just dance around the house with the music on, like it didn't matter that there was nobody dancing with her. She'd be fine dancing on her own. And, as much as I was embarrassed by that when I was a kid, you learn to love those things, don't you? And then you learn to miss those things when they're not around. But yeah, it was more her actions rather than her words that I miss.
So the house that you live in now, is that the same house where your mom lived?
Yeah. Okay. So we lived in our family home. It's probably 20 minutes from here, and we all grew up there. Me and my brothers grew up there, so we were probably there for over like 30 years. And both my brothers had moved out. Obviously, my oldest brother got married and moved out. My other brother had moved to the Caribbean for work purposes, and it was just me and Mum in the house, in the family house, the old one. And she went through a bit of depression. She was very low in her mood. Hadn't ever seen her that way before, and it was quite tough because she lost her love for loads of things. She lost her love for like cooking. She lost her love for music. She lost her love for just even talking to like family and friends like on the phone like she used to. So we'd been there for like over 30 years. And my brother gave me this idea of, maybe it's the house that we're living in, because it obviously had a lot of memories. That's when my dad died. Like he died, sadly, in the living room. And, we hadn't really, I think Mom struggled bringing us up with finances and stuff. And we didn't have all the things in the world. And I think doing the house up and decorating it, we didn't really do it up as much as maybe we should have done. And it was kind of a very old house. It was very dark. The windows were very small. So it obviously held a lot of memories. So my brother was like, you need to move out of the house. It's not the best place for her. And, he gave me a kick up the backside and told me to get my bum into gear and do something about it. And at first I was like, no, this is the family home. We can't leave it. Mum was always said that she will never leave it. Mum's always said that this is the last place she wants to be, and, we can't move. And I started house hunting, and I kind of did it all on my own. It was really tough. It was really, really tough. I had no idea, never done anything like that before in my life, but it gave me a huge responsibility. And it was like, a sudden grown up, because I was only probably 30, must have been 30, 31. So I wasn't very old. So I started house hunting, and we found this place, which is where I'm at the moment. Well, she spent 18 months here before she passed away. It's actually coming up to our four-year anniversary of being here in April. But yeah, she, when we moved, her spirits had just lifted. I don't know what it was at the old house. I don't know if it was just the old house or if it was just the fact that it had a whole load of memories and stuff. And she was on antidepressants and everything else as well. But, when she came here, it was almost like a new lease of life. She just was super happy. She was super happy. She kind of not straight away, but I noticed the small changes straight away. I noticed like the bit of a lift in her mood. She suddenly started playing the radio again. She suddenly started making phone calls to friends and family again, and then she started cooking again, and then it just kind of got more and more, and it was so nice, because then she would spend like some of the day in the garden, do it pottering around and stuff, and yeah, her spirits are really lifted, and she was like super happy. And I think that that final year of her life, where we went to the Caribbean and spent that time over there, where she spent some time in India with her family, and she got to travel a bit more in India than she did before, and she'd had a really good year, I think, before she passed away, except for obviously the last few months where she really wasn't very well. But yeah, I think she did love this place. She loved the light that it brought in. She loved, just because obviously the whole reason of me finding this place, it wasn't for me. Wouldn't have been a place that I would have picked, to be honest. It was for hers. I was looking for a place for her, and looking for a place that would suit her needs and fit her, really. And yeah, I think I found it. So it's quite hard for me to now give this up, even though, yeah, it's not the best place to be. But yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering, is what it's like for you then to be there without her.
I mean, yeah, it holds a lot of special memories, because it was a place where she became, the old mom again. I think, she became like the one that loved cooking, the one that loved cleaning, the one that loved, pottering around, listening to music, dancing. She was back to her normal self, and I think it holds a lot of lovely memories of that. When I go out into the garden, it's nice to be out there, because I think she loves spending time out there. And during lockdown and stuff, like the last lockdown, I spent a lot of time in the garden, potting plants and doing things and being very green fingered. And I did it, and it reminded me of her, and that was really nice. It just made me think of her every time I was out there. I kind of neglected it a little bit at the moment, but that's because the weather's been really crap. But I will be back out there when the sun's shining. In like our Hindu community and stuff, and I think a lot of Asian people do this, where they have a open casket. So during the time of the funeral, we have an open casket, and it's generally brought into the house. So we have the open casket at home, and that's where Mum would leave from. So Mum was brought here from the funeral parlour. She was brought here to the home, and this house was like packed. Like, it was packed full of people. Pre-COVID, obviously, it was packed full of people. We had a marquee in the garden that was packed full of people. Everyone just paying their respects. And this was the last place that she was. And even though she didn't get to, come home from the hospital the way I wanted her to, or the way we would have wanted her to, she still got to come home before we cremated her. And that's really important to me, because I think if she hadn't, it would have been quite tough, because I would have been like, what, the last place she ever was in hospital. So I am glad that she did get to come home before, obviously, the ceremony. I am glad that she did get to be back in the space. before, you know, because we believe that, Hindus believe that there's 11 days of mourning. So there's like an 11-day period of mourning where the soul is neither on earth or anywhere else. It's kind of like in limbo. Yeah, so like I feel like she was here because we had the funeral 7 days after she passed away, because you're meant to, as a Hindu, you're meant to fit it in within that 11-day period, so you can put the soul to rest. So, as the soul's in limbo, she was still around in spirit. Her soul was still here, so her soul got to come home. And then Hindu traditions and Hindu ceremonies and stuff, they're very, very old school, very, very old school. Yeah, we still did it the way she would have wanted.
Did you have specific things that you were to do or to not do within those 11 days of mourning?
Yeah, I actually posted about this not long ago on my Instagram. One of the things that I kept getting told was not to cry. I mean, I'm smiling about it now, but at the time I was really pissed off because I was like, how are you going to tell me that I can't cry when my mum has just died? Like, that is just ridiculous. You can't ever expect that. You can't even, why would you even say that? That was really, really tough in itself because I was obviously in floods of tears. I was obviously like constantly crying. I was obviously very, I was destroyed. Like my heart was broken. There was nothing left of me at that time because I wasn't there. I was kind of looking over myself. I felt like I was hovering over myself and looking at myself, and I was hearing these people telling me not to cry and hold it together. And even the day of the funeral, I remember, being next to my mum's coffin and stroking her face and holding her hand and doing all those things. And I was crying, and, people behind me and putting their hand on my shoulder, telling me to hold it together and to stop being so, stop crying because my mum's soul wouldn't then be able to rest. And if my mum knew me at all, like, which she bloody well did, was she would have been there to kind of hold my hand and stop me from crying also, but not for those reasons, because she was a big crier. She would cry all the time about things, and I think I get most of my crying from her. She was a very emotional person, and I think I'm the same. I'm very much like her in that sense. And there's just loads of traditions, just the whole, yeah, you're not allowed to cry, you're not allowed to do you're not allowed to do this. And I remember in our community and stuff, boys have the men in the family and the boys in the family have more of a right to do certain things. And on the 11th day, we had a ceremony to obviously put my mum's soul to rest. And it was my brothers that were asked to do everything. I remember, so he's like we call him a pundit, but like a priest almost, Hindu priest, telling me that I shouldn't do certain things or I can't be part of certain things because I was the girl. And it was my brothers that had to do everything. And I remember going into the kitchen and like crying, and I was just like, who the fuck does he think he is? I'm the one that did everything for my mom, I was the one that lived with my mom. I was the one that looked after my mom. I was the one that cared for her. I was the one that took her to appointments. I was the one that, cooked for her and cleaned for her and did everything when she couldn't do those things. So who are you to tell me that I can't do these things? And you're asking my brothers to do it instead when they weren't even in the house at the time. As much as I love my brothers, I looked after my mom. I gave up things to be with my mom. I didn't go to I went to university, but I didn't go to the university that I may have wanted to go because it was just me and mom and I needed to look after her. There's loads of things that I put on hold and I don't regret it. because I did it for her. I don't have any regrets, but for you to turn around and tell me that I can't do these things because I'm not a boy, that was really shit. And as I had these arguments with family as well, like, you know, family and, dads that only had like daughters, they didn't have sons. Well, what would you do in that respect? You don't have a son, so are you telling me that your daughters aren't going to do these things for you then? Or do these traditional things that you would like them to do? You can't stop them just because, they're not a boy. It's ridiculous.
Did you have any of those times where they told you that you couldn't do something and you just went ahead and did it? Or did you went ahead and let your brothers?
I think the only time I really kind of stepped back was, so after the funeral, we went to the crematorium, and we all had our little speeches and stuff prepared, and we all said stuff. And crematoriums aren't meant for women. I say that because I went, and other people were there, other ladies were there because they wanted to pay the respects to my mom, and I appreciate that. But again, it's very old school. Back in the day, old school mentality where the older generation believes that women don't go to these places. Well, hang on. My mom was a woman and she's in this place and she's being cremated. So why am I not going to be by her side? Don't be so ridiculous. I was going to go anyway. Everyone knew that I was going to go, and people knew that I was going to go. And I went, and we all went and stuff. And they traditionally ask the boys in the family or the men in the family to. I don't know how crematoriums work because I didn't actually. This is the bit that I didn't do, even though I was like, I'm going to go, I'm going to go. I didn't do it. I don't know how they work. I don't know if it's like a button you push or something where that it actually gets the process going of the cremation itself. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, I didn't get to do, even though I wanted to go. And we were in the crematorium itself, the hall itself, where you sit. And I remember it like getting up to go with my brothers to like follow them. And I was about to go, and there were people holding me back and saying, you shouldn't go, it's not a place for you and stuff. And there's this one person in my life right now who I would go to for anything, and I put her in place of my mom, I suppose. Not completely, but she's a lady that I respect, and she's my cousin's wife, and I love her to pieces. And she came over to me and she just said to me, she held my hand and she said to me, your mom wouldn't have wanted you to see, my mom wouldn't have wanted you to see you go through that or to see you witness that. And that's when I was like, okay, you're doing it out the goodness of your heart. You're not saying it because of tradition. You're not saying it because of old school mentality. You're putting it in the perspective of my mum wouldn't have wanted that. And that's what I took on board. And I didn't go. My boyfriend went, who's now my husband. They asked him to go. But I was like, hey, fine, he's there. My brothers are there. It's fine. And, my cousin's wife who was holding my hand and saying, it's fine. Like, your mum wouldn't have wanted you to see that. That's what I took on board. And I think if people had said it that way, and if people had like put it in that perspective and said to me, you know what, your mum wouldn't have wanted that, I probably would have listened. But for you to tell me that I can't do it because I'm a girl, I don't buy it. Because if I wanted to go, I would have gone. But yeah, I think that's the one biggest thing that I kind of actually stopped myself from doing. But in terms of actually going ahead and doing things that I was told not to, yeah, sure as hell I cried. I did, whatever I wanted. There was things that were around the funeral time or the 11th day of when we put the soul to rest and stuff. There were things that he just didn't want me to do, and it was quite a blur, to be honest. But I think I pushed my way to do certain things, but there were just certain things that I just wasn't allowed to do, and I just thought, you can't argue with someone who's got these old school traditions and is set in their ways And, deep down, I know my mom, would have followed those same old school traditions. She would have been like, you can't do that as well. She would have had that mentality. So as much as I will want to rebel, I know that she wouldn't have wanted me to. So that also kind of helps, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be respectful of your time. And so is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to go ahead and bring up?
No, just thank you for allowing me to share my story and stuff and kind of be open with a stranger and pour my heart out to you because it's been like you said to me in your messages that it's, I'll feel good after it, and yeah, I do. It does make me feel good, and to release a few, whatever's buried deep down, it's nice to talk to somebody about it. And I hope that, if there are other people out there that are going through something similar or doing, feeling these feelings and stuff, that, you're not alone. And there are so many people out there that are going through exactly the same thing. Maybe people that you don't know directly, but people that are out there that are going through exactly that. And it's definitely good to reach out and good to talk when you're ready. Because I certainly wasn't ready. If you'd have asked me to do this a year ago, I'd have been like, no chance in hell. There's no way. But I think this is what grief is about. It's some sort of journey that you have to just, keep going with. And I'm trying not to call it a process anymore because I think a process needs to have some sort of outcome, whereas a journey could go on forever, which I think this is exactly what it is. It's a journey that will forever live with you. And I think the only other thing is try to not be regretful of any decisions that you make in life. Just be honest and true to yourself. And I think as long as you're honest and true to yourself, then that's the only thing that matters. Yeah, I'm going to leave it on that.
Okay, very good. Where can we reach you on Instagram?
My page is obviously pretty new. It's only started in January. I am under Just Keep Swimming, or my actual Instagram page is jks.1985, which is the year I was born in. They're showing my age there. Yeah, it's pretty new. I mean, I haven't shared anything really personal about my mom or anything like that. It's generally like quotes, messages, my thoughts. But now that I have come out to my brothers about the whole thing, there will be some more personal stuff out there. And I was actually tempted to post a picture of my mom on her birthday, but I think I might hold out for that. But I will eventually do that when But just drop me a message, a voice note. I've noticed is quite common now. I've been getting a lot of voice notes on Instagram. But feel free to say hi. I would be more than happy to speak to anybody that is willing to reach out.
And tell me your mom's name again. I don't want to say it wrong.
Champa.
Yeah. Okay. Did she have a nickname or anything?
Champs.
Oh my God, yeah. I love it. Oh.
All right, you take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Parentless Podcast is recorded in Phoenix, Arizona. Find us on social media and most major podcast platforms. Music provided by Colin Lococo and the Revolving Birds. Studio and editing provided by Back Home Media and Ian Relaford. Check out one of the many shows on our network. I am your host, Stephanie Relaford.